We are now moving away from text and paragraph formatting, at least for now, and moving into lines and shapes for this video. And in the process, we'll also introduce how color works in InDesign. So let's begin with some basic lines. There is a tool specifically for lines, and it's right there underneath the type tool. It is called the line tool, and we can select that. Now, before we draw the line, let's talk about a couple concepts. One, color. If you look down here, you've got this little set of swatches. One's called the fill, and the other is referred to as the stroke. If you don't know what that means, think of it like the border, the edge of any object or box. Okay, so fill and stroke. I also want you to notice that as I click on one or the other, that one comes to the top. That's how I indicate which one is currently active or selected. If I want to change the color of a fill or the stroke of an object in InDesign, I need to first make sure that I've chosen the right one. Do I want to change the color for the fill of a square or for the border color of a square? Do I want to border it all? These are the kinds of choices you have to make right here. You'll also find this same swatch set underneath the swatches palette. Once again, you see the same thing, fill and stroke. And here it starts to make a little bit of sense. If I want to use a fill color of red or blue, well, fuchsia, whatever that's called, blue, yellow, red, I can change it this way. If I want to go back to no fill, meaning transparent, empty fill, I choose none. If I now select the stroke color, I can choose whatever color of line I might want. For example, maybe this nice blue here. Now you'll notice there's not a lot of colors right here, but that's okay. In a little bit, we'll talk about bringing in a variety of colors from different sources. Okay, so we've selected blue or black or whatever suits your fancy for the stroke color. And we've left the fill at none. For a line, since it is not a square, it is a line, it does not have a fill color, only a stroke color. You cannot add a fill to a line. If you want to add a fill and a border, then you're not making a line, you're making a rectangle, which you can use with the shape tool. And under the shape tool, you have rectangle, circle, or ellipses, and forms of polygons. So, oh, sorry, for the record, I'm holding the mouse button down if you want to do this. If you want to see what alternative versions of these tools are available. Some of them, if they have this little triangle in the bottom right, have multiple variations. If you hold the mouse button down, you can change from, for example, making squares to making ellipses. We'll call it the shape tool, but really it's either the rectangle tool or the ellipse tool, depending on which one you've selected. So we'll keep it on the rectangle tool for now. So back to the line. We're going to make a line. We've chosen a color of blue here for the stroke. You cannot apply a fill to a line. And the other choice is, for lines, how thick do you want the line to be? So from the obvious little icon here, you can see that the stroke has its own palette. You have the option of fill and stroke color choice here. But you also have a whole palette related to the stroke or the border of things. The weight is the same as thickness of the border. So 1 point or 1 pixel, maybe if you want to think of it that way, it's really 1 point, is very small. You won't see much of that kind of a line, at least not easily for a beginner. So let's go up to like 4 points maybe. Okay, this is the thickness. And there's lots of other options here, but we're not going to go too deep with that because, like I say, it's an intro to InDesign. So let's draw a line. We're going to draw a line, and we're going to start right off the page, and we're going to draw this line right across underneath our header. Now you can notice it's not really easy to make it perfectly straight. So a little trick here that will apply and pop up on many occasions is holding Shift. If you hold Shift when you're making something, it will restrain the options. It will restrain the line, for example, to only being 90 and 45 degree increments. So I can do that and let go. When I let go, I have my line, and I still have handles on either end of the line if I want to change it or move it afterwards. Now, there's a lot of extra lines here, so let's do the W key. Remember, the W key will remove all of our additional boxes that are there just to keep things organized for us, but aren't going to print. All these little boxes are just guides. They don't go to print. So by pressing W, we can quickly check if we like what we're doing, and press W again to go back to our working view. Let's make a small tweak while we're here. We'll go back to the selection tool. Remember the selection tool, and we will move the line down or up, whatever you want to do. It could be above, it could be below. It's a decorative element. It's an ornament. It's quite powerful how a small item like this, done tastefully and carefully, can be so powerful and have such an impact on the professional crispness. A crisp professional look and really come about quite quickly. So I just moved the byline around a little bit so that it's aligned a little bit in from the edge of the T here, maybe more closer to the stem of the T. This looks nice, and that's creating lines. You can create as many lines as you wish. But if you wanted to make a box, then we need the rectangle tool. So let's switch to the rectangle tool. What we're going to do here, just for the sake of learning, is do some kind of a highlight box to indicate the deck, to make it stand out, to be separate, to make it pop out, sort of like a sidebar. And we've made the box, and it's used the default setting that we've set up for making the line. Just like the line had no fill and a blue stroke of 4 points thickness over here, remember? We have the same thing for our square, but we don't want that. What we want here is a simple square of color, no border, and maybe a fill color that, we'll choose as we go. So it's currently selected. Let's make some changes to it first, and then we'll add color. So go back to the selection tool. With the selection tool, we can resize, make it smaller, for example. I like it like that, I think. It's going right to the edge of the page. And if it's not selected, this is selected, this is not. If it's not selected, color changes won't apply. Make sure that it's selected. Always make sure that you have the item selected you want to make changes to. Let's do a fill. We remember that let's do a fill. We go to swatches, make sure that the box is selected. It is. Let's first get rid of the stroke. So the stroke is currently blue. We want no stroke for now. And switch to the fill by clicking on fill, and then we can choose whatever fill color we want. Don't worry about the text disappearing. We'll talk about this in a second. So let's find something that works for us. The red is too, it just doesn't work for me. It's too primary. We need maybe to use the same blue or something a little different. We'll talk about additional colors in a second. Okay, so we've got a blue square. If you did want to create a border, what would we do? Go back to the stroke and then choose, for example, a red border. And then we don't see anything. So go back to the stroke and increase the border. Now this is kind of silly looking, but we're just learning how to make things. So that's how you would make a shape with a border and change the color for both. So we don't want, notice that if it's not selected, the changes don't apply. Super important to get used to that. But we don't want the stroke. And we don't have to make it equal 0. We really just need to make the stroke be none. And there you go, no border. And that looks much more professional looking. Okay, why do we not have text? Well, the text is technically underneath the blue box. Why is that? In InDesign, all objects, text boxes, shapes, these are all objects stack on top of each other in the order that you create them. So for example, if you were to take a text box create that first. And then create a red rectangle. Because the red rectangle is created second, it's on top of the text, which was created first. And get rid of this border. Okay, the text is still there. It's just underneath that object. The red is on top. And this stacking order has been there from the beginning. This is on the very bottom, the first thing we made in this red box. The last thing we made is on the very top. If they don't overlap, you can't tell that they have this relationship. But once they overlap, you'll see what was created first and then second. To change this, though, is what we need to know. So either or, we could right-click this text box and find the option for arrange. Now, arrange is available in several places, but the quickest and easiest way to do it or access it is to right-click, find arrange, and say send to back. Now, send backward means to send something back one step in the stacking order. If I say send to back, we fixed our problem. We have text, we have a red box, and we're moving them separately. If you have a red box, and you have a blue box, and you have a green box, and you stack these, you can see that the order of creation makes sense as we've explained. But what I want to do in this case is to put the green square between the red and the blue square. So if I select the green square and I say right click to that, arrange, and I say send to back, the green square goes beneath everything, right to the bottom. You can see it's underneath both the red and the blue square. Let me undo that, Control Z. There we go. And one more. If I right click on the green square, choose arrange and say send backward, it moves it back one step in the stack. So imagine that this was a deck of playing cards and we wanted to move the ace underneath the green queen, which is on top of the jack. So we're moving this card one step down in the stack of cards. And that's a really good way to think about it, like a deck of playing cards, and you're moving cards down one step, one card at a time. Okay, so that's a sort of a quick once over how that works. So now we know how to solve this problem. Underneath here, we still have our deck. Okay, Control Z, but we made the blue square afterwards. So what do? Right click on the blue square, choose arrange, and say send to back. Or send it backward. It depends on the stacking order and what order you created it in. Send to back will go right to the back. And there we go. That looks good. Now this is probably a good time to explain something that can cause a lot of confusion for people in using InDesign. And this may have happened to you already as you're following along with this video. Usually, if you've selected something, it remains selected until you click on something else. So if you had just finished working with this text, for example, and now you wanted to change the color of this box, if you've left the text box selected when you start making color choices, what you'll end up doing is applying background color, fill color to a text box. You can also, I'll get rid of that, mistakenly add a border to a text box, such as this. And I'll just increase the stroke so you can see it. The end result is that, which frankly looks terrible, but it does happen. So to remove it, of course, select the text box, go back to swatch, and there it is. Red has been applied to the border, to the stroke of the text box. So with it selected, I choose none, deselect, and it's gone. So to avoid adding color mistakenly to the wrong thing, always be aware of what's selected. if I've selected this text box, which looks great, these black words on this nice white background, if I have that selected and I don't pay any attention to that, and then I decide that I want to make a new square, and I think, let's choose the color first before I draw the square, which makes sense. And I go and I begin to make choices for my colored square. Oop, there you go. I've applied that color. I've applied it to whatever I left selected. So let's undo that, none. And what the practice is, what I want you to be aware of and to do going forward is before you do something new, just get into the habit of clicking outside. It's okay to click here if there's nothing else there, but a guarantee is to click just outside. And then you've deselected. With nothing selected, you could make choices. You can say, I want a red square with a black border, or let's try black instead of that, and a weight of 7 or 8 points, and then choose your square and draw it, and boom, you get those choices. That worked exactly as one would want it to, but it worked and didn't cause me any trouble because I was aware that I still had something selected and I want to deselect before I move on to the next thing. It's always good to deselect before you move on to the next task so you don't mistakenly change or add something to an object that you didn't intend to. Okay, since we're on the subject of color, let's discuss adding colors to the swatch palette. Now, the starting color pack in swatches that is there when you start a new project in InDesign is pretty much the equivalent of an 8-pack of crayons. It's not very complete. The colors are very primary and basic, and we want to get some real nice rich colors in here. Let's have a look right here. So each one of these palettes has a little menu indication icon or button in the top right corner. So in swatches, there it is. If you select that, you'll get a whole bunch of options related to this palette. We're looking for new color swatch. This is also available down here, new swatch. You can be specific about it and say that you want a new color swatch. Either one will work. So when you click on that button, you'll get the new color swatch pop-up window. And you do have sliders here, and you can play with them. And if you start playing with these sliders, you can definitely make up a color. But the most professional thing to do in InDesign is to choose from a color library. You can choose from Pantones, for example. Let's have a look at the Pantone CMYK uncoated, for example. This gives you a huge library of colors, and I can choose something, this nice green, and I can add it. This gives me a new Pantone color, and I can use the selection tool. I can select my background square there and change it to that green. Oh, I did what I told you not to do. I added a border. So what do? Say no, switch to fill, and choose the Pantone. There we go. So we've created a new color here, and it'll stay in this project. It won't be permanent. If you started a new project, you'd probably have to add it again, but it will be forever part of this project in the swatches. So let's add one more. Let's go new color swatch. Let's choose again the Pantone coated, and we'll slide through here and look for something that we like. Maybe this sort of off tan sort of color here, and add. Perfect, and done. And select, and let's confirm we're on the fill color here, and there we go. Nice tan color, which I actually kind of like with that blue. That's working out really well. So that's how you bring in additional colors. If you know, for example, what color you want to create in the CMYK color system, you can punch in numbers. You might know that a particular brand color that you want to create is a CMYK color, and you could type in 50, 10, 78, and 10. And this gives you a particular color based on that CMYK color code system, and you can add it. There you go. Okay, time for another quick tip that makes life easier in using InDesign. Let me just quickly draw another box to make this easier to understand. Here's another box, pretty much the same size as the green box underneath, and I'm going to arrange and send it backward. One more, arrange, send backward. Perfect. So there's 3 elements: the red box, the green box, and the text that are all existing in the same space. It can be difficult sometimes to get the object you want selected, especially if there's a whole bunch of objects overlapping. So here's a quick tip to allow you to, for example, easily select that green box underneath. I'm going to click on the text, and it selects the text, of course. But if I hold the Control key down and just keep clicking in this area, notice that it's cycling through those 3 objects. If you hold the Control key down while you click in a particular area, just single clicks, it will cycle through every object that is underneath your cursor. So if I click once, twice, 3 times, and press delete, I've deleted the green square. I'll undo that. If I hold Control again, click once, I get the text. Click again, I get the red square, and delete. That helps with selecting things. Another great quick tip is locking objects. If I know that this and this, I can select more than one thing, this and this and this and this and that and this. All those things are exactly where I want them, and for at least the near future, I'm not going to change them. I can lock them. Right click and choose lock. There it is. This locks these objects, and then I can't select them easily or move them. So let's have a look. I'm going to press the W key. This shows me all of the containing boxes that everything that I've created is in. Each one of these objects, you can now see their box that they're contained in. And you can now see a little lock handle or icon on the side. If I now try to move any of these things, I can't. They're all locked in position, and I can't mistakenly bump them or delete them or anything. The beauty of this is that if I want to quickly unlock it, all I have to do is click on the lock, unlocking the object. Now I can move it. So it's easy to unlock it. So don't hesitate to lock something if you want to keep it safely secured in place. Go ahead and lock it, because unlocking it is quite easy, and you can easily unlock everything just by selecting the little lock on each one of these objects. Works pretty good.